He's the King of Rio, the former WEC and two-time UFC featherweight champion, easily one of the 10 greatest fighters to ever lace up gloves and a favorite to all hardcore fans. For the last 2 decades, José Aldo has remained a constant presence in the world of mixed martial arts. But our question is, how much do you actually know about this era-defining talent? Well, for today's video, we're going to take a dive into 10 things you didn't know about José Aldo Jr. Like so many fighters, José didn't get into his craft due to a long-standing passion for martial arts. No, his life on the tough streets of Manaus led to him getting beaten up quite a bit by local bullies. And so, it did not take long for him to realize that he needed to learn how to handle himself in a fight. Capoeira was the first art form that he studied. But after being spotted by a local BJJ coach as he was practicing his moves out in public, the young Aldo was invited to train in a legit jiu-jitsu gym, and from there he found his way to various striking arts and eventually MMA. When he was 17 years old, he decided to uproot himself and move to the larger city of Rio de Janeiro, and before he even turned 18, he had competed in his first pro bout, winning the contest by way of head kick KO in less than 20 seconds. The scarring that covers some of José's face certainly makes for an intimidating look and gives him a cool nickname. But in reality, the events that caused this to happen are actually pretty grim. During a family party, one of his older sisters picked up José's crib and threw it to one of his other sisters. The problem? Well, the baby Aldo was in there. And he unfortunately landed face first in a lit barbecue, scarring the side of his face for life. One can only imagine how traumatic this must have been for such a small child. But the fact that José grew up and became a huge success and a multimillionaire speaks volumes about the strength of his character. His story was such an inspiration that it didn't take long for the people of Brazil to latch onto this rising talent, and he, like his contemporaries Anderson Silva and Vanderlei Silva, was revered by the masses for their ability to climb out of their early living situations and achieve global stardom and success. But where José differed from these other two was that he actually was the subject of a biopic movie entitled Mais Forte que o Mundo, in Portuguese, or Stronger Than the World. The film showcased the life and early trials of the featherweight legend as he climbed out of obscurity and eventually rose up to claim UFC gold after his run into the WEC. Unfortunately, because of José's crushing defeat to Conor McGregor, the film's release was delayed for several months, with the studio anticipating correctly that it would be a bad time to put out the movie. Despite going 7-0 to open up his pro career, José decided to take a step up in weight for fight number 8 facing off against Luciano Azevedo. However, this experiment would not work out for José in the end, and he would end up suffering his first professional loss, losing by way of second-round submission. For some fighters, this type of defeat at such a crucial point in their building process might be the gateway to a steep decline. But for José Aldo, the exact opposite happened. This early loss would be his last for over 10 years, a decade-long run of dominance that saw José carve out a Hall of Fame-worthy career before he had even turned 30. Of course, it all came to an end when Conor McGregor's left hand found his chin, but even then, the way that José rebounded from that massive loss was a true testament to his character. Watch any early Aldo fight, and you'll notice just how skilled and determined a leg kicker he was. Long before we marveled at his insane takedown defense, ridiculous body punching, and excellent head movement, anyone who thought about José's skill set would immediately think about his leg kicks. In fact, his leg kicking game was so feared that it became synonymous with his name, like Poatan with the left hook or Rampage with the slam. If you need proof, just look at what he did to Uriah Faber in their WEC title fight. And also look at how messed up Faber's leg was the next day.
It's hematoma. I went to the hospital because they want to make sure that I didn't have a blood composite, which can, stop circulation to your foot and things like that.
But here's the interesting part. For whatever reason, José eventually reached a point in his career where he pretty much cut leg kicking out of his game entirely. Some have suggested that perhaps injuries led him to minimizing this aspect of his offense, or maybe he just felt that it was too predictable. But if you only started watching Jose in the last 10 years, you might not be aware of how lethal and legendary his leg kicking actually was. Remember how we spoke about that insane run of dominance Jose had for 10 years after his first loss? Well, you might not be aware of just how good his resume turned out to be. Guys like Mike Brown, Jonathan Brookins, Mark Hominick, and Kenny Florian came from an era that a lot of newer fans missed. But these are excellent wins for anyone's resume. Then, when you add in more well-known modern names like Uriah Faber, Frankie Edgar, the Korean Zombie, Cub Swanson, and Ricardo Lamas, you can see why Jose was considered such a legend by many. He was already in the top 10 of all time when McGregor beat him. Factor in that he then went on to beat Edgar again, Jeremy Stevens, Bernardo Moicano, Marlon Vera, Rob Font, Pedro Munoz, and Jonathan Martinez after that. And it'll be pretty obvious why people call him one of the greatest fighters to ever do it. José Aldo is one of the most well-rounded fighters to ever do it. But one of the key areas of his skill set, his BJJ, is often left completely unused because of his near-impenetrable takedown defense. Jose always had an incredible ability to stop wrestlers in their tracks, something he has retained, and arguably even gotten better at in his older age. He was the only guy to fully stifle Murabdvalishvili, stopping all 16 of his takedown attempts, even if he did end up getting smothered on his way to a losing decision. But because he's so good at avoiding fighting on the mat, he only has one submission win, an arm triangle from all the way back in fight number 3 of his career. He is a classic example of a long-time BJJ black belt who never has a reason to show off his skills. One of the strange things about Aldo's career is just how well he managed to translate his skills, moving down in weight to the 135-pound division. Usually, cutting that extra weight can have a truly detrimental effect on your durability and cardio. But despite being in his mid-30s at the time, Aldo pulled it off better than anyone. But what's interesting to note is that during his long and successful spell as champion, there was constant speculation linking Jose to a move up to lightweight, especially when the budding superstar Anthony Pettis was champ. The fight was even booked for UFC 163 before Showtime was forced to pull out due to injury. In the end, the closest thing we got to an Aldo fight at 155 was when the recently dethroned champion Frankie Edgar moved down in weight and fought Jose in an immediate featherweight title fight, losing by way of unanimous decision. Following his losses to Max Holloway, Jose began to put more and more of an emphasis on his boxing training, eyeing up a possible move into the sport permanently. He even spent time working with the Brazilian Navy in the boxing gym, citing it as a period that relit a fire before he returned to the UFC to take on Marlon Vera. When he actually did leave the promotion, it was to finally partake in pro boxing, where he scored 2 wins and a draw in 2023 before eventually returning to mixed martial arts. In fact, up to the point where he lost to Mario Bautista in a pretty meek performance from the younger fighter. In the last 19 years, he had only lost to UFC champions, and then one controversial loss to Marlon Moraes that Jose probably deserved on the scorecards. Moraes was also a champion in World Series of Fighting who had competed for UFC Gold. Simply put, in nearly 2 decades since his first early career defeat, Jose Aldo only lost to Bautista, Moraes, and then champions Conor McGregor, Max Holloway, Alexander Volkanovski, Murabdvalishvili, and Peter Yan. That's a truly remarkable level of longevity right there. By the time he returns to the octagon next, unless he retires out of nowhere, he will edge closer to the 21st anniversary of his pro debut. And he's still ranked in the top 15 at bantamweight, perhaps the most stacked division of them all. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. If you like what you just saw, we think you will love one of the videos on the screen right now. See you next time.